Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday. It is 4 p.m. ET, and we are so thrilled that you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 16 novels of suspense. My brand new book is called All This Could Be Yours and comes out September the 9th, about a debut bestselling author on the book tour from hell. And that is all I will say about it tonight, because right now we are here to talk about the fabulous Shari Lapena's brand new She Didn't See It Coming. And you all know how I just love Shari Lapena. Every single thing she writes is amazing, page-turning, smart, sophisticated, surprising. Her signature multiple point of view style and the absolutely unputdownable suspense of every one of her books. Each book is different, but you know with the Shari Lapena book, you are going to get something wonderful, and this is absolutely great. Shari's been on book tour for the past weekish or so. Welcome home. How has it been?
Thank you. It's been really good. I mean, I went to, I think, 5 cities over 5 days in the US, and the crowds were very enthusiastic, and I had a great time. Some really good evenings.
Well, I have to share that Shari and I were together at an Unlikely Story bookstore in Plainfield, Massachusetts, and the people were just pouring into the store. I have never seen such a crowd, waiting in line until the doors open to get into your standing room only event. That must be kind of great to see, Shari.
It is. It's very heartening, I have to say. It's nice to see the crowds building each year when I tour the US. And it's just the enthusiasm of the readers. It's just so gratifying, that they love this book, and they seem to be very excited about it. So it is very gratifying because, as you know, Hank, it's a lot of sitting by yourself at your desk. So it's great when you finally meet the readers and they all really like it. So it was great.
And Laura says, I have this on my TBR list at my digital library, so I have to wait for several months. So I know it must be good. You could just go buy one, Laura, or just call. Maybe you'll win. This is a good way for you to get this. Maybe you'll be the winner today when we give away a copy of Shari Lapena's Didn't See It Coming.
As Margaret said, books are expensive, and if you need to, if you want to use the library, I think that's fantastic. It's wonderful to use libraries. Just try and get to know the librarian. Maybe she can get it to you a little early.
It's interesting that you say that, Shari, because it's so important to use libraries, and people might not realize, readers might not realize that it really matters to authors that people, that waiting list is annoying for you, but it means that people are interested in the book, and that means the book will stay on the shelves, and we absolutely love that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
But the thing about the crowds at your launch events, Shari, in the United States, is that most of those people have not read this particular book. They're coming because of their allegiance to you as an author. You've led them to believe, or taught them is better after all these years, that they're going to get a good book and they want to hear you. That's a sort of vote of confidence in you personally too.
Mm-hmm. I think, most of the people, when I was touring in the US, the book was just coming out. So most people were just getting it for the first time. So yes, they've read, and so many readers said to me, I've read all your books. I've read all your books, or I've been waiting for this one, or you got me reading again. I'd stopped reading and you got me back into reading, or I couldn't put it down. And that it's so good to hear that, because, I set out to write page turners. That's what I want. I want the reader to be completely engrossed in the story and not want to stop reading. So those are the kinds of comments that I most like to hear. So it was very nice to see so many people bringing in like my backlist to sign, old trade paperbacks and mass market ones, and so I'm always happy to sign those. Because it shows their loyalty and how excited they are. So it's a good thing,
and a real feeling of connection with you. And that is really lovely. If you've just joined us, we're talking about She Didn't See It Coming by Shari Lapena, which is on waiting lists at libraries. That is a wonderful thing to hear. Thank you, all of you readers, for being patient about waiting your turn for the time. It will be absolutely worth it. If you are new to A Mighty Blaze and Crime Time, welcome, welcome, welcome. A Mighty Blaze was started at the beginning of the pandemic by Caroline Levitt and Jenna Blum to sort of keep us talking about books and keep us discovering new books and finding our new favorite authors, or maybe linking up with one of your already favorite authors like the fabulous Shari Lapena. And we will be giving away, well, we won't, I'm keeping this one, but Shari and will be giving away a copy of She Didn't See It Coming to one lucky commenter at the end of the show. So leave a question or a comment or just general adulation for Shari, and we will spin the wheel of fun at the end of the show, and one of you will win. I'm going to talk for 5 more seconds and just tell you about Shari Lapena for a minute, and then I promise we'll get to her. Shari Lapena is the internationally best-selling author of the thrillers The Couple Next Door, A Stranger in the House, An Unwanted Guest, Someone We Know, The End of Her, Not a Happy Family, and Everyone Here is Lying, which have all been Sunday Times and New York Times bestsellers. That is just quite a feat. Her books have been sold in 40 territories around the world, and she lives in Toronto. A very interesting life, I have to say, in Toronto, and we will get to that in a minute. So let's talk about this particular book, Shari. I always love to hear you describe what this book is about.
This book is about a woman called Bryden Frost who is working from home one day at her condo, and her husband gets a call at work saying that she failed to pick their daughter up from daycare. And so he goes to pick the daughter up, and when he gets home, he finds that his wife's car is in the underground garage. He finds that her computer's open on the dining room table where she's been working. Her phone is there, her keys, her purse are there. Everything looks undisturbed and completely normal, but there's no sign of her, like no idea where she could have gone. So as the book progresses, and as she's gone for longer and they're looking for her, all the suspects start to come out of the woodwork. And we have a couple of detectives, Detective Jane Salter and her sidekick, whose name I've forgotten right now because I just finished the next book. Driscoll, I think. Was it Driscoll? Anyway, she has a sidekick. When you've just written another book that you've just edited, it's like the other book just goes right out of your head. Anyway, the detectives have to find her, and it becomes clear that perhaps she never even left the building. So we think that Bryden is somewhere in that large condominium building, and the clock is ticking. It's
so fascinating. First of all, we'll get back to you not remembering the character's name because that is such a pitfall of being an author. But
yes,
it's one of the many things that's so wonderful about this book. It's so relatable because these are regular people in a regular condo building leading regular lives, and it's Ruth Ware called you the queen of suburban paranoia, because this is something that could happen to anyone. Is that important to you in your books to have them be relatable like this?
Yeah, relatable is a good word for it because it's, I think people enjoy reading about things that seem plausible or very realistic. I try to keep my books quite realistic and reality-based. So they're all plausible. And I think that the average person is interesting. I'm not someone who thinks that only people, up in, celebrities are interesting. I actually don't find them that interesting. I think the average person in the average life is actually really interesting. And I think they have interesting relationships and stuff going on. And so I like to explore that. I think anybody who's in a family or in a relationship, there's always sorts of dysfunction going on. There's always some stuff going on behind the scenes. So, I like to look at regular people and what could be going on in their lives.
And readers all think, oh, I know someone just like that, or my neighbor is just like that, or even I'm just like that, because every character has a secret. Every character has something they're keeping from their spouse or loved one. Every character has something they wish or hope for, whether it's to tell or not to tell. Do those characters, let's talk about Bryden and her husband and her daughter. How did you meet those characters in your mind?
Oh, I meet them on the page, which is to say on the computer laptop. I just start writing, and as I write, I imagine what the characters are like. So I started with Bryden and her daughter and her husband, the father, Sam. And I just get to know them a little bit. Usually I start with a situation with some dialogue. And I find that dialogue is a really good way for me to explore characters and get to know them. So when they start to talk, And when they react to what each other is saying, that's when I start to understand who they are. And then double meanings will come out and snarkiness will come out, all sorts of things. And then with this one, I went back and I added a prologue where she had a fender bender with someone beforehand. And when she's driving to pick up her daughter before the fender bender, she's thinking about her child. And then I thought, oh, she's an orchid child. She's one of these very sensitive, fragile children. And I thought, oh, that's perfect because her mom's going to go missing. I'm going to make things really hard for this poor.
That makes the stakes much higher. Absolutely. And one of the things that, I think that what Ruth was saying about suburban paranoia, her fender bender reminds me of that, because you're so good at taking what might be an ordinary situation and showing us, revealing what the scary part of that must be. Like if you have a fender bender, what happens after that?
Yeah, because if you have a fender bender, we're all trained to exchange information. But that's the perfect way for someone to get your information, right? Now, the tricky thing here, because what I always do is I never make anything obvious. So in this instance, she hit him with her car. So it's not as if a strange man came along, hit her car, and then wanted her information. So you never really know with me, right? It could be completely innocent, or maybe it isn't. It's that's how I write it from the very start, and then I get things more. What's the word? More unclear as you go along in a way.
Yes, more. Well, because when you start with a situation, there are many doors that you could go through to what the story would be.
Yeah.
And as you keep writing, some of those doors close and you focus on what really happened. But it's the journey that we go on with you.
Yes, and some doors will open, right? So there will be other doors. So you're going off always in a new direction.
And speaking of going off in a new direction, your fabulously signature style is to have multiple points of view. So we are in different people's heads along the way. And I don't know how you do it so absolutely seamlessly and gorgeously, but it works so well because we are immersed in the story. Can you talk a little bit about how that evolved and why that works for you?
I think I've when I started writing my thrillers, and actually might have done this earlier, I don't know, but I find if I can switch point of view, I can keep going. So I never get stuck. And I find that if I have lots of points of view, I never have to be stuck, because if I've finished with something, then I'll just switch into someone else's head. And I always have them reacting to what's happened before or what might happen next. And so if you have like 8 different points of view, something's always going on. So you never really get stuck. So I think that's why I started with the multiple points of view. I think when I was writing, I just thought, oh, well, let's just try this person. And then I found that really worked for me. And I've stuck with it ever since. I don't know that I would ever not do a multiple point of view book.
Well, the 2 wonderful things about that. One is sometimes that means that the reader knows more than the characters do. So the reader is saying, oh, he or she is bad. Oh, he or she should not be saying that. Oh, that's a mistake. And so we're really in the story. You really put us in the story with the characters. And that gives us this sort of dramatic tension because we know something and we're worried for the characters.
Yeah.
Some authors can't do it. It makes the book feel complicated. But in your novel, somehow it's seamlessly gorgeous roller coaster of a ride. Do you write it in order of how it happens in the book?
Yes, almost always. The only thing I've ever done out of order is when I went back and put the prologue in for the fender bender. Generally, even my prologues are right at the beginning, and I write chronologically, and it's because I don't plan. I have to write chronologically because if you don't know what's going to happen, if you don't do it chronologically, there's no way to figure it out. You have to, one thing leads to another, which leads to another, which leads to another. So I start at the beginning and I just keep going. If I couldn't not write chronologically without a plan, because nothing would cause anything else to happen. If you know what I mean? The causation wouldn't be there.
I mean, the causation is what makes a good novel, in my opinion. It's the dominoes that fall and touch each other and touch the next one and touch the next one.
Yeah.
Because. And it's also because someone makes a decision about something that starts the dominoes to fall. And then
Yeah.
that decision-making process, the character is revealed. Can you talk a little bit about that decision-making process, the character is revealed? Can you talk a little bit about obstacles and decision-making and what
Yeah,
elements?
so it's the characters who make bad decisions that create, keep the plot going. So it's really all about, all my books are they're character based. Like I know the plot's important, but they're really about the characters, what they're hiding, what they want, and what they're willing to do, and what they do. And when they're put up against a wall and they make a poor decision, and you're in your head and you want to say no, like don't do that. But it's the bad decisions they make that make the story interesting. I mean, if everybody did the right thing and told their husband or wife exactly what was going on at the beginning, you wouldn't have a story.
Exactly.
So,
But the tightrope that you walk so gorgeously, though, in that is that even when someone makes a mistake or makes a wrong decision, we understand the motivation for it. So we're not saying, why would you do that? We're saying, oh yeah, I understand why you would do that. So how careful are you to make sure that we understand the motivation of the characters?
that is so important. I dislike when I'm reading a book and I'm not convinced that a character would do something, or I'm asking myself, why would a character do that? It's not clear to me why. I think it's super important that I think one of the ways the readers get engaged with the book is it's believable and they can see it happening that way, so they're engaged. So if you give a good reason or you explain why someone does something, for instance, in the couple next door, they leave the baby at home and go next door and they take the monitor. But there's a lot of explanation in there about why they do it, how they feel about it, all the various things that went wrong to create that situation where they did that. So you can say, oh, they should not have left that baby alone. Well, of course they shouldn't have, but the babysitter canceled, and the woman next door wouldn't let them bring the baby, and it was right next door, and they had all these reasons. So you have to always you have to have gray areas. You can't have black and white characters who just do a bad thing. They have to be relatable, normal, real people that you believe in. And you think, what would I do? And you think, well, I wouldn't have done that, but I can see why they did it.
Exactly. And that is one of the geniuses of She Didn't See It Coming, because everybody is doing what they need to do for themselves and what they need to do for others. And sometimes those things are in conflict. I mean, I remember reading The Couple Next Door and just gasping at it, because I actually have a friend who did that, who took her baby monitor and came over from next door. And I think you even say in the book what she said, which was, well, if I were on the third floor and the baby was on the first floor, I would be the same distance away, and I could get there. I could get there quickly. So rationalization is always people's downfall. So this book, in this book, the mom, Bryden, doesn't pick up her daughter at daycare, and the book begins with a search for her. Where did that? Lori says normal people are very scary. Yes, Lori. Especially in a Shari Lapena book.
I think so, yeah.
So where did this come from? What was the domino that fell in your mind that started this book?
Well, a couple of things. I've always been interested in stories where someone just vanishes and there's no sign of foul play, and you don't know what happened. Like when someone just walks to the store for a loaf of bread and no one ever hears from them again. So I always find those interesting. But also, I saw a documentary on the Elisa Lam case, which is the case where a woman went missing in the Chelsea Hotel a few years ago. And they searched and searched and searched, and they didn't think she'd left the hotel. And they finally found her in the water tanks on the roof a couple of weeks after she disappeared. And that case, I found it really interesting. It was a very sad case. It was very interesting. But what was so interesting was it was so long. It was between 2 and 3 weeks before they found her. And, they'd searched and searched, but because the mystery is no one can figure out how she got inside the water tank. So, because it should have been impossible for her to do that. But anyway, the idea came to me then of having a woman working from home go missing in a building, and everybody looking in the building, and the CCTV in the building, because there's some spooky stuff with her in the elevator acting strangely. And I thought a condominium building would be a really good place to do one of those claustrophobic Shari Lapena missing people stories.
Exactly. We should talk about that building in a second. But going back to the person being missing, it's creepy because it's even more creepy than finding someone dead, because you don't, because it's up in the air where they are. They might be fine. They might have gone, they might have had a flat tire. Talk a bit about how that helps with suspense, that unknowing.
I find missing persons stories really interesting because it's just so unfinished. And I think people want to know. So even if you find a body and you don't know who did it, it's a little more, I don't want to say satisfying. That sounds so ghoulish, but it's a little more satisfying in a way than a completely open-ended situation where you have no idea what happened. Like, did she just walk away, start a new life with someone else? We don't know. Like, you don't know. It must drive people crazy. And I focused on the family that's left behind when she disappears, because I can't even imagine what that must be like, not knowing where someone is. Someone that you love. Like, where are they? What happened to them? It must just make you go mad. Never knew.
Absolutely so, because one minute they were there and you had an ordinary life.
Yeah.
And the next minute, because of some decision that someone made somewhere that you don't know who is, your entire life and your entire family's lives are upended for some unknowable length of time. She didn't see it coming, is the perfect title for this. And you see on the cover, you all, this gorgeous condominium building, this sort of beautiful jewel-toned condominium building. Is this a real place? And why do you think that this condo building is such a perfect setting for this?
It's not a real place. I made up the condominium building based on many that I've been in and that I know. And, I know lots of condominiums. So it's sort of it's an idea. It's an idea because you've got a lot of neighbors in the same space. Like, there's some suspicion about people who live in the same building. There's also lots of things like, there's the elevators that go up and down, and there's the underground garage, and there's, various common areas that they check and recheck. So it's just, this is a lot of opportunity to play with the reader. And I found it quite fun to do.
It's great because there, not only there are neighbors and friends and people and strangers. There are no crannies. There are empty apartments. There's clearly someone who has a key to many of them. Who knows what other keys might be?
I just had an idea yesterday. I thought it would have been fun too, because what if she was just like that Nick Hornby novel where, I can't remember which one it was, where the woman just wanted more than anything. She just wanted to have a bed sit on her own. So just to get away from being a wife and mother. It would have been so fun for her to just take a weekend and go off and, go in an empty apartment and just do nothing. But I didn't do that.
Oh, absolutely. And I wrote a book about foreclosed homes and how the banks have all the keys to all those houses, and the houses are empty, and who might be, using those keys to go into homes. So anyway, but in this book, also, you use amateur online sleuths as an element of this book, because when Bryden goes missing, it's all the buzz, and people are wanting to know. And of course, about how the internet and television and radio and all those blogs, the true crime blogs, focus on a certain case, and that's what happens here. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you use that element of the story?
I must have been going through a true crime phase because, as along with the Alyssa Lamb thing, I also saw a documentary called Don't Fuck with Cats on the Internet. And that was a fascinating documentary about some people who started, they saw a video on the internet of someone torturing and killing cats. And they made it their mission to find out who this person was and to stop him, partly because they hated what he was doing to the cats. And also it's well known that serial killers will often start out this way. So it sounds like something out of fantasy, but it actually really happened. These people developed a group and they did all sorts of detective work on, the background and the videos and so on. And they tracked it down and they finally discovered this guy, and he was a serial killer, and they found him for the police. So that's what started my interest in this whole true crime online sleuthing thing. But what's interesting about it is it gives you such opportunity for people like to vie for attention. There's often people that will insert themselves into an investigation. Sometimes even the killer will insert themselves into an investigation because they like the feeling of self-importance that it gives them. So this becomes a way for Lizzie, Brian's sister, to sort of see what's going on with the case and also to interact with other people. And she wants to share what she knows as an insider. And then, a lot of people in there are saying they know things that she's thinking, how can they know that? And not everyone's using their real name. And it just becomes very murky and interesting.
Let me just take a moment to say hello to everyone who is here. Kathy Lanigan is here and Robin Stull. Sue Street is here, who says, I love Shari's books. Shannon Hansen says, so excited to read this book. And Luann says, I'm right in the middle of the chaos. Then I think I know who's guilty. Then the next page, no, I'm wrong. Cannot wait to finish this. This is so fabulous. This is so fabulous, Shari. And Shari says, I'm close to the top of the library list. Laura says, I would love to buy, but my book budget is exhausted. Join the group. Yeah. Absolutely. So that is all of us. I know the feeling for that. But we were talking about the use of, how many of you in the comments do online sleuthing? How many of you are true crime aficionados? One of the things that her sister does is it's sort of a sibling rivalry that she wants to get attention. She's feeling left out. Her missing sister is getting all the attention, and she is sort of left out, and she hides in her room, sort of focusing on this case. It's so many themes of sibling rivalry and marriage and jealousy. All those kinds of themes come into this novel. Do those just evolve as you're writing them? Yes,
they do. So when I started, I didn't know she would have a sister. But of course, if she's going to have a sister, she can't be an uncomplicated, loving, perfect sister. She has to be someone with issues and complexities. And I wanted to make her really interesting and also suspicious. So that's what I do with all my characters. I kind of make everybody a little bit off, a little bit strange, a little bit, but realistic. Like, yeah, we all know people that go down that rabbit hole. We all know people who have done things they shouldn't. So, I didn't plan for that. That's just something that evolved out of the story. And I thought, this is perfect because I have a missing woman. And, wouldn't it be fun if someone was, using the Facebook group to try and get involved and maybe try to solve the case, or maybe has other issues going on.
What it also does is when something in a normal world upsets the equilibrium of a family unit, everybody wonders, how will this affect me? How will this affect my life? And what is going to be discovered about me as a result of the investigation into what happened to her? Can you talk a little bit about the ripple effect of something like this?
That's my favorite thing about these kinds of stories is the ripple effect, because, the worst thing that can happen to you, if someone around you goes missing or is murdered or whatever, if you've got anything to hide, you're screwed. So it's, if you're a neighbor of someone who's gone missing, you don't want anything like that happening around you if you've got something to hide, because it all comes out. So I forget what I was going to say.
About the ripple effect and how you like that the effect.
So I always look at what's, how it's going to affect each character, and it has to affect them in some horrible way. Like even little things like Lizzie, the sister, her parents think her interest in true crime is vile, and so there's issues there between her and the parents about her interest in true crime. There's issues with what are the police going to think. Everything spreads. Like nothing is just isolated. Everyone's going to have an opinion on everything that happens. So I like to overcomplicate things. It just,
But I do think, Shari, that this is your genius, because you do show the ripple effect, and those ripples obviously connect with each other and cross in conflict, but it's never complicated. It's easy to understand. It's seamless. We are completely in the story, and it's so much fun to read. And one of the characters in the book who I adore is the detective Jane, who is such a rock star main character. She's layered and textured and lovely and relatable and deep. Can you talk a little bit about her and where she comes from? I love her philosophy.
A lot of people are responding really well to Jane. I'm actually thinking maybe I need to bring Jane back and do another crime book with her. Yeah, she's, I think, based on a history of me reading and watching a lot of kick-ass female detectives who have a lot of family problems and issues they're dealing with. And I said this somewhere, I don't know whether it was with you or at some other event that I did, where, the male detectives always seem to have a problem with drinking, and then maybe they're divorced. But that's about it. You don't hear about all the other stuff. But if you're watching Mare of Easttown, like her family dysfunction problems, it's just like, it's endless. Or Jane Tennyson in Prime Suspect. All the misogyny she had to deal with, and the office politics, the anti-feminist stuff. I mean, women detectives, I think, are automatically far more interesting than male detectives because they have so much more to deal with, and they're, they have more. I think women often are more attuned to their emotions, so they're affected by what they see and who they interview, and in a way that maybe men aren't. Now I'm probably going to get lots of hate mail. I shouldn't have said that.
No, but I think that it is believable and logical for a female detective to be very empathetic and very sympathetic, especially when it comes to a missing little girl. That's going to be a heartbreaking kind of thing. And one of the things that I love about Jane and about your writing is that you not only use Jane as a detective, but to give us some emotion about what crime feels like, and what happens to victims, and what happens to victims' families, and why justice is important, and why solving crimes is important, and why they're about people. And you gave her a psychologist as a boyfriend, which is so brilliant. Can you talk about that?
That was deliberate. That was actually a deliberate thing. I thought, oh, I know, I'll make him a psychologist, because then I could have him explaining various psychological things to her, or she could ask him or use him as a sounding board about people and what kind of a person would do such and such a thing. And I found him super useful that way, and because I love psychologists and I love psychology, so I think I'd love to bring him back with her. And just as an aside, there are some couple of psychopaths in this book, so it's just interesting to have a psychologist in the room.
Because it gives the reader a chance to have a beat to think about what would cause someone to do something like that.
Yes.
Could I possibly do something like that? How does this evolve, and how does it affect everyone? It gives us a moment to digest the story and sort of change our own perceptions of the world a little bit, which is a really sophisticated thing to do in a slam bang mystery like this. I can't believe, and we're running out of time, I just want to say hello to Andrew Ball is here, and Mariam is here, and Josephine Tabano says, great interview. Thank you. Melanie says, what a great idea to use the element of the story. You should come back and look at all of these because you're just getting wild ovations in this book. I can't believe, and the only reason I believe it is because I do the same thing, that you didn't know the ending of this.
But you don't you're the same. Yeah, so I didn't know the ending.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so you're writing a story, and for me, I'm writing to find out what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. I know what the problem is. As I go, I know who the people are. I know what their problems are, and as I'm writing them, I'll discover who the suspects are as I write, and I might have 4 or 5, but as I write and further develop the book, I deepen each of those as a possible likely suspect, so that even I think it could be any one of these people, and I don't know which one it is. So that keeps me writing. And then towards the end, it becomes more clear to me who it should be.
So you're writing in search of the story.
Yeah, I want to see what's going to happen. That's the fun part for me. Absolutely. I want to know what's going to happen. And I want to know who did it too, but I have to finish it to find out. So that's
a good incentive. That's what gets you to the keyboard every day, is you can't wait to find out what happens. Yes. And only you can figure it out, because only you can write it. I absolutely.
Someone asked me once, what happened after such and such, and I said, well, I don't know. I'd have to write a sequel to find out, because I don't know. I'd have to write it.
Well, And I have to say, you sort of alluded to this a little bit earlier, that you might want to bring Jane and her boyfriend back.
Thank you.
When you read this, you all, and I know you will, because you are smart and wise readers, run, 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 click, click, click. There's the ending, and then there's the ending, and then there is the ending. So do not rush through the end of this book. It is a Lapena masterpiece. I absolutely loved it. And is that why you're thinking about bringing her back?
Well, I often with my books, I will leave things a little bit open-ended at the end. So I always solve the crime, the main crime the book is about. But I often, I think with most of my books, I've left things just a little open because I like to feel like the book and the characters are carrying on after the last page. Because life isn't over. We know these people are out there. They're still going to go on. But in this one, I've definitely left a little hook of something that might continue to happen that, feels unresolved for me. And I don't think I'm done with these characters yet. So
did that surprise you too, that moment?
What's that?
Did that surprise you too, that moment when you wrote that?
That moment did. So that moment, which we can't say because we'll spoil it, that wasn't in the first draft. That is something that came through in revision. I thought, oh, I can bring this out more.
And I hope that has tantalized you and tempted you.
It's so hard to talk about these books because we can't say anything without spoiling it.
No, yeah. I could have sat here and talked about other stuff for half an hour and you'd still know that the book is fantastic. Shari Lapena, she didn't see it coming. Margaret, let's take some questions from the audience and see who also is going to win this. Betty Fellows, hi Betty, says, was the title the same from the beginning or has it changed?
The title always comes at the very end, and we usually have to struggle for weeks or months trying to figure out what the title is going to be. And it's usually not me that comes up with it. It's usually the editors, the marketing team, the publisher. I mean, it's a team thing. We all bat around a million ideas for weeks. That one, I think, came from my British editor, but I'm not sure. But certainly it wasn't mine.
Yeah. And of course, you all, there's more than one she in the book. So the title works on many, many levels. Who else has a question? How do you choose your, hey, Sharon. Sharon Bishop says, how do you choose your character names?
That is really hard. I struggle with names. Do you struggle with names, Hank?
Every single day.
Oh, I don't know why it's so hard. You need a name that works with that character. So I do change names quite frequently. And even for stupid things, like I'll have an editor who's working on another book with exactly the same character and they get confused. So I change the name. So yeah, names are hard and you don't want to have a name of someone that's famous that has the same name. So I'll usually do a Google search and see if there's a lot out there, but you really can't avoid it. I mean, using a name that may be the same as the name of someone who's alive. Although, Hank, your name is so unusual. And my name is quite unusual, the pairing of so I don't think there's anyone called Shari Lapena or Hank Phillippi Ryan out there except us.
That's true. That's good.
Yeah. Unless we get in trouble and then everyone knows it's really us.
True. That's a good book idea, actually. And there are all sorts of things. You can't use a first name that ends with S because it makes the possessive use be very, very difficult.
Never thought of that.
Like
but you're right.
Yeah, is very hard. And also, the names are so hard for me that in one of my books, I guess it was Her Perfect Life. I didn't know the characters' names, so I called them A, B, C, and D. Through the book, and then they turned out to be Alyssa and Bree and Colin and Derek.
I have used letters before, and the other thing that I find really weird, and I'm not the only one that does this, I'll end up with a lot of names early in the draft that all start with the same letter. And I'll realize I've done it again. So that's why I started doing the ABCD thing.
What are your letters?
Well, I just like ABCD, but what like if I start off with someone's called Amy, then I'll have an Andrew, and then I'll have an, Anastasia or something. I don't know what it is, but it's apparently a lot of people do that, and then you have to change them.
You love this. Well, this is stuff you'd only hear on Crime Time from Sharon and me.
Yeah,
all of my names begin with C or M, and then I have to change them. So why?
That's just so odd. I know.
I don't know.
It's
but
so weird.
That's the fun part about being a writer. Let's take one more question. Hi Stephanie. What did you read as a child, teen or young adult that may have influenced the thrillers you write? What a nice question.
Well, when I was a child, I was a huge Nancy Drew fan, and I was so excited in Toledo to go to the Nancy Drew exhibit because that's where Carolyn Keene, or actually Millie Brewer, wrote the first, I don't know, 27 or so Nancy Drew books. So that was really fun for me. So I was a huge Nancy Drew fan. And I knew I wanted to write Nancy Drew books back when I was 9, but I didn't. I waited until I was much older and wrote something else. But a lot of Agatha Christie, a lot of Patricia Highsmith, a lot of all the historical suspense. I read a lot of, Philippa Gregory and Phyllis Whitney and, Mary Higgins Clark and, all of I read, I'm one of those kids, I read everything I could get and I wasn't that discriminate, about what I read. So I would read, literary stuff. I would read, historical romance. I would read crime. I've always liked mysteries though. That's my favorite genre.
And all of it just goes into our brains and is fodder for us. I don't regret any book that I've ever read.
Daphne du Maurier, I loved her. Yeah, just so many.
Niall Marsh and Josephine Tay and Marjorie Allingham and
yes,
Sayers and all those wonderful golden age mysteries
taught
us about telling a story. Taught us about suspense and the architecture of a mystery.
Definitely. That's you internalize all that stuff that you read. And you may not have it consciously in there, but you pick up the beats, as you say, about when is a good time. It's like timing is such an important part of thriller writing, and knowing when to drop that beat or that little bit of information.
And it's like music. It's like writing music. You can feel the rhythm of it. But that's why, Shari, that's why you can sit down at a computer and know how a book has to be, even if you don't know exactly what happens. And that's a skill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a skill.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Of course, it gets better after you edit it. Like when I'm writing the first draft, I get the story down and there's lots of twists and turns in that story and the characters are all really out there and everything, but it does need some work.
That's the fun part when you think, all I have to do is this and pull this string or put these two things together or change that to that. It's like a cool puzzle that you made.
Yeah. You're just refining and tightening and sharpening and making more creepy and all that stuff. So.
And so many of the elements that you're sharpening and tightening are also things that you discover in the edits that you didn't know were there that go together in a way.
I'm so glad you said that. That's exactly right. So when you're writing it, and then you go back to edit it, no one's ever said that to me, but it happens all the time. There are things in there, Easter eggs, that beg to be expanded, that you planted, like your unconscious mind or your subconscious mind planted there, and for a reason, but you didn't notice it at the time. And then you think, yes, I have to lean into that. So that happens to me a lot. I'm sure it happens to you a lot too.
Oh, absolutely. It is completely a gift from the writing gods. I get goosebumps thinking about it. And it just shows you there's a thing that's a story, and our brains, our subconsciouses know more than we realize they know.
I'm a huge believer in that. I think creativity, they know, comes from the subconscious, right? So all of your ideas, whether they come right to the front of your brain as a conscious idea so that you can plan something, or whether they're just welling up as you write, it all comes from the subconscious. That's where your imagination is. So, but it's funny to, you'd be writing along and you'll have a surprise. You'll go, oh, I didn't see that coming. That's great. But you're right. When you go back and read it the first time, you think, oh, a little Easter egg here, and this is really interesting here, and I didn't quite notice that before. And it's fun.
Sue Grafton used to call that the magic, and I completely embrace that. And it is throughout Shari Lapena's wonderful new book, She Didn't See It Coming. One of you will win this marvelous book.
Who's it going to be?
Go to the bookstore, get this book for yourself. Let's spin the wheel of fun and see who that is going to be. I love this. I don't know how this works. Margaret in the back room makes this work, and I think it's great. And the winner is Savannah. Wonderful. Congratulations, Josephine. And you know how it works. You will email me. You'll get an email to email me. I'll email Shari's people. They will email Shari, and they will all get you the book. Congratulations on this. Another blockbuster, amazingly wonderful book, Shari. This is so great to have you here.
Thank you. And I just have to say, I loved Hank's new one.
Oh,
This Could Be Yours. Oh my God, it was so great. I read it in 2 days, and I know it's had some amazing reviews from, was it Library Journal Star Review. It's about a it's about a writer who goes on her first book tour, and she's huge, but something creepy is going on in that book tour, and I just inhaled it. I really enjoyed
you
it.
were just on book tour, so it didn't give you PTSD or something in the.
No, I read it right before I went on book tour, and nothing like that happened to me, but thank goodness. But it could have, because it was all stuff that could happen. If it was all believable stuff that could happen.
Well,
it's just your warped brain, put it in there, and yeah.
Thank you. I'm really touched and honored by that, Shari. That means so much. You're going to take this little clip and then play it over and over and over.
Yes.
Thank you. That is really kind of you. We'll be talking about All This Could Be Yours right here on Crime Time on September 2nd. So I hope you will be here for that. Thank you. Thank you. Let me just keep you for one more second to say, come back next week at 4 p.m. ET, where we will be talking about Too Old for This by Samantha Downing. And I will not tell you anything about it except look at this woman with her gray hair.
I know.
She has a bloody hammer and a black glove. Only the mordant wit of Samantha Downing could pull this off. It is actually...
It's the best title. Best title. I want to read that one.
I can't wait for you to read it. It's great. Samantha Downing is hilarious and skilled. And this is, I want to say, quite unique. I've never read anything like this. It will have you laughing and wincing from moment one. So that is next week on Crime Time right here at 4 p.m. ET. Shari, thank you again. Congratulations on another massively best-selling novel.
Thank you.
And the rest of you, thank you so much for being here. We've absolutely adored having you here today. Don't forget to join us next week at 4 p.m. ET for Samantha Downing. Until then, remember, it is always safe inside a book.